This is a podcast from the Royal Statistical Society. My name is Adrian Bowman, and today I have a very interesting, indeed exciting assignment, because I find myself inside the House of Commons in a very plush oak-lined office, speaking to the House of Commons librarian, John Pullinger. Welcome, John. Thank you very much for agreeing to meet me and have a little chat. My first question is, what do you do as librarian?
Okay, thank you, Adrian. It's my pleasure to be part of this. The job of the librarian of the House of Commons is what it's always been since 1818, to provide any information that MPs want to do their jobs.
So it's nothing to do with collecting fines for overdue library books?
Oh, of course, we have to do that as well. We do lend out books to MPs, and we have to have some way of getting them back.
So, more importantly, however, what you're telling us is that the House of Commons Library is the place where MPs and others go to get information to inform what they do in the political process. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, we deal with hundreds of requests from MPs every week. And we also publish lots of analysis reports, including statistical reports, on pretty much every subject you can think of.
This sounds like a big job when you think of the number of MPs there are in the House and the number of things that government is interested in. How big a staff do you have?
Well, within our main research service, we've got about 70, and they are experts on individual topics, and they are there to work, as I say, for the 650 MPs and all their staff they have both here at Westminster and in the constituencies.
So the library itself is part of the Houses of Parliament, and that's where MPs go. I can imagine that if there's going to be a debate on a particular topic, then you might find people knocking on your door rather urgently needing information. Do you find it a very pressurised environment to work in?
Well, we try and anticipate as much as possible. So for every debate we will produce a debate pack with all the information we think MPs want. So we try and get ahead of the game. But the main element of an MP's day is pressure of time. They do need things quickly, often now, and certainly within a matter of hours or days. So we have to organise ourselves to do that. And yes, sometimes it is very pressured.
So can you give us some indication of the sort of requests you get, just some examples of the kind of information you have to dig out quickly?
Well, sometimes it's just very straightforward factual information about what is the latest change in GDP, how many people are there in the country, or that kind of thing. Sometimes it's more complex analysis of the makeup of the Parliament by party, ethnic group or whatever, how that's changed over time. And sometimes it's much more evaluative, thinking about the impact of a particular policy. For example, cost-benefit analysis around a new airport expansion.
I hope that people could hear the chime in the background just to confirm that we are actually in the Houses of Parliament. So it's really good to see that statistics and statistical methods are absolutely at the heart of good government, and I think statisticians generally understand and appreciate that, but it's perhaps not always widely appreciated just what an absolutely core role is played by this kind of service. Could we reflect a little, John, on your career, how you arrived at the position of being House of Commons librarian? Let's go back to the beginning. Where did you graduate from?
Well, I graduated from Exeter University with a degree in statistics and geography. And one of the courses that I had done there was a course on social trends. And I think that would be the defining thing for me that really set me on the path that I'm doing now.
That's interesting. So that captured your imagination, and government seemed the natural place to go, or did you have some other job before you entered government?
I came into the government statistical service straight after university. I did look at other jobs with an analytical or statistical bent. I mean, I was particularly looking, for example, at oil companies. But what the civil service seemed to offer was a huge range of jobs that you could get into with a lot of really interesting statistical content.
So tell us a little bit about the first few assignments you had in your earlier years.
Okay, well, my first job in 1980 was looking at trends in investment in the manufacturing sector, and it was a time of huge shakeout in British business, and the Treasury in particular were interested every single quarter in what was happening. Were businesses investing or weren't they? What were they investing in, and what would change that? So that was a really good thing to get involved in from the beginning, and it certainly made me appreciate how important statistics are to the whole business of politics.
Was that job already in London? Did you work elsewhere?
That job was in London when I took it, but it was moved to Newport, and I went to Newport with it.
So where did your career go thereafter?
Well, while I was working in Newport, as well as working on investment statistics, I worked on producer prices of goods in the economy. I worked on retail sales, shopping numbers, which was another very interesting field, because the retail business was changing very rapidly during the 80s. Out of town shopping centres, for example, coming to the fore.
So what do you mean by shopping numbers?
Shopping numbers. The retail sales index comes out every month, and is to this day eagerly awaited by economists as well as the retail sector to demonstrate whether we are going out and buying things or not, and that is a core indicator of the health of the economy.
I see. That must be particularly relevant at the moment too, now that we're going through difficult economic times.
It is, and statistically it's a fascinating challenge, because shopping habits in all of our households vary hugely through the year. So the biggest task was trying to adjust for things like Christmas, or even worse, Easter, which appears at different times each year. And again in the 80s, 7-day shopping was just beginning, so how do you adjust for the fact that people are now able to shop on Sundays as well as the rest of the week? So working out a methodology to do all of that was a core part of my job.
It must be very satisfying to think to see the things that you work on being used and published in that sort of way.
Satisfying, but sometimes also scary. You produce a press release and it goes out and it's plastered all over the newspapers, and you're always kind of living a little bit on tenterhooks as whether you got it right, but there's always a great team backing you up. And yes, it is satisfying. The numbers you're using, that you're creating, are being used.
So let's move on a little. After your spell in Newport, did you come back to London? How did your career develop?
I did. I came back to London in 1985 and had a job measuring the finances of local authorities. And this was at the time when the government were considering the introduction of what was then called the community charge, now called the poll tax, and a big part of my job was providing the information base for ministers, working out what the impact of various changes in the taxation system would be. So a lot of modelling, a lot of assessment of different scenarios, but again very, very political and very eagerly awaited by everyone up to and including number 10.
So there's a real sense in which your job in the Office of National Statistics and in all branches of government that you've worked in has been about good quality information informing good decisions, and that remains true in your work in the House of Commons.
Very much so, yes.
Good. Well, let's return to your present role a little, shall we? Because a large number of MPs, all walks of life, and in many ways representing society in the different backgrounds and fields of expertise. But perhaps not many people have a very well developed expertise in statistics, or may think they have no expertise in statistics. How do you deal with those kinds of issues when handling the critical information that you're seeking to provide?
Well, our customer base really is, I think, as variable as you can get. We do have some extremely sophisticated, statistically literate members of Parliament, but we also have some who have never really had any need to interpret numbers in a deep way before. But in Parliament you do. You're bombarded with ideas coming out of government, reports purporting to demonstrate something is evidence-based. How do you evaluate that? As well as producing publications and answering inquiries, we see a significant part of our job is helping MPs to interpret the information that's coming to them. And we'll go to their offices, we'll sit down with them, and we'll just help them improve their own skills.
So can you give us some examples of the sorts of issues that you sometimes meet, without divulging names or contexts, just to give us a flavour of the issues here?
Well, the issues will range from an analysis of different things coming out of the budget, or different interpretations of what's going on in climate change, where you're looking in a fairly sophisticated way about how you assess the validity of different evidence, through to some very straightforward silly things. I mean, like a report talking about a a price for a particular good being 140% less than a benchmark, and trying to explain that this is, if it were possible, it would be an extremely good deal and get some money back on this straight away.
Yes, I'll have one of those, please. Now, I know, John, that you're involved in this kind of activity on behalf of the Royal Statistical Society as well. There is a campaign being developed at the moment. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, well, I'm very excited about the campaign. It's called Get Stats. It will run for 10 years, and the aim is to raise the level of statistical literacy and understanding across the whole population. So citizens, teachers, businessmen, and of course MPs as well.
That's a superb thing to be aiming to do, but it sounds like a really big task. How are you going about it?
Probably the first thing we're doing is getting our friends together. There are a lot of friends, particularly in associated disciplines, in maths and in other sciences, who have got a similar set of problems to us. And sometimes very, very similar and aligned. In many scientific disciplines, basic understanding of numbers is a real impediment to people's understanding of science. So we can make common cause with many of those other bodies, and that's what we're doing.
Good. But in terms of activity, what sort of specific activities are you planning? I know you mean not to know what you'll be doing in 10 years' time, but what are your plans for the first year or so, if you have them?
Well, probably the most important, iconic project is significance in the classroom. So the RSS has its fantastic flagship publication, Significance, and we have a plan to get that into classrooms as a means of exciting children in secondary schools in particular with the possibilities of statistics, get them talking about it, get them interested in the things that we can provide information about.
Excellent. I recently saw a video too that I think had been created as part of the project. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yes, the video was it was a bit of fun, but it was also very illuminating. We did some vox pops on the street corner, in fact just outside this building, talking to people about their views of statistics now, and well, extremely variable, but usually a sense of confusion, lack of understanding, or even fear of using numbers. And we know we start from quite a low base with most people in the country, but similarly a set of vox pops looking at, so what would you like your feelings about statistics to be, and exactly the opposite of those. In 10 years' time, we hope that most people will feel confident, happy and interested in using statistics to make decisions about their own lives in a much better way.
Well, we wish you every success with that project. I gather that there's a website called getstats.org which people can go and look at if they'd like to see more, and look forward very much to seeing how that develops. But thank you very much, John, for spending a little bit of time telling us both about your current job in this rather exciting environment, as well as your career. Very grateful for the time you've spent. Thank you.
Thank you very much.